Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to our Planning and Development Committee meeting. Happy New Year to everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. Now we're going to go to item D, delegations, and there are no delegations. We'll go to E, the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to speak to or pull? Okay, seeing none. We'll do the approval of the regular agenda. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The motion reads that the agenda be adopted, including consent items as circulated.
Moving a seconder, moved by Member McIntyre, second by Member Taylor. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we are now going to go into a closed session. Do what?
So the motion reads that committee resolve in a closed session and this meeting is hereby now closed to the public pursuant to the Municipal Act, SO 2001, Chapter 25, Section 2392, for the purpose of considering a litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board.
Moving a seconder, please. Moved by Member Brennan, seconded by Member Taylor. All in favor?
It'll be
No,
motion
yeah,
out.
out, okay. So we'll come out of closed session.
Now, Madam Clerk, you can, council can give direction to staff in close to speak with the solicitor.
Back in
Yeah.
Ed, so
Yeah.
just the broadcast is back on, just so you know.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
The motion just reads that the closed session adjourned at 9:44 a.m. and that the meeting is hereby now reopened to the public.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
May I have a mover and seconder, please? It's a motion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Need a mover and a
Moved
seconder.
by member McIntyre, second by member Taylor. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion reads is that confidential planning report number P25-003 dated January 15th, 2025, with respect to a notice of motion filed with the Ontario Land Tribunal regarding 4331 Utah Flying be received, and that staff, the township's planning consultant, and the township solicitor proceed as set out in the report.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by member Taylor, second by member Minnings. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we'll go. Section E, no, sorry, section C, public meetings. A break? Okay, we can. Can we wait like a Call the meeting to order. Hello, we're starting the meeting. Okay. Public meeting, zoning bylaw amendment Z 2413-3296 Port Severn Road. Welcome and good morning. There is one public meeting regarding a proposed development application in accordance with the Planning Act. I am pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Notice of the meeting was sent by first-class mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property. Signage was also posted on the subject property to provide information about the application. All of this was in conformance with the Planning Act process for a statutory public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment application. The purpose of the meeting is to inform and provide the public and the Planning Development Committee with an opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to the proposal. The format of the public meeting will be as follows. The applicant's agent will generally explain the purpose and effect of the application. Second, the township staff can provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant and/or their agent. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal. And then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And lastly, the members of this committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions for clarification on the proposal and provide comments. At the conclusion of the meeting, the applicant, their agent, and if required, township staff will be given another opportunity to respond to the questions and comments received. No decision will be made today at the public meeting on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. Following this meeting, the information obtained, including questions and comments submitted by members of the public and committee, will assist the township to determine the next steps. The township is the approval authority for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, for which this committee may recommend the bylaw to be considered by council or ask for additional information prior to council's consideration. If in the future Township Council decides in favor of the application by adopting the recommendations from this committee, members of the public who have provided oral or written submissions but disagree with the decisions may be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, under the Planning Act. Individuals attending the public meeting in person or by YouTube or Zoom or telephone may email or call the township's planning department to submit contact information to receive notice of the decision on the application. I now call on the applicant's agent, Victoria Lemieux, is that right? From Morgan Planning and Development to please present the information provided within item C.1.3.1 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and effect of the application. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee, and any member of the public who may be watching online. As mentioned, my name is Victoria Lemieux. I am a registered professional planner with Morgan Planning and Development, and I'm here this morning on behalf of the Walters family, who is also here in attendance in person in case there's any questions or comments for them as well. So we're here this morning in regards to the property located at 3296 Port Severn Road. As you can see here on your screen, committee, the property is located with frontage onto Georgian Bay. So we're just south of that Lock 45 landmark that obviously I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And the property itself is located within the Port Severn settlement area as well. Next slide, please. So the property currently has dual existing uses, one being the existing residential use, and the second being the existing tourist establishment use, which is locally known as Stonewall Cottages, and that is the business that the Walters family currently operates on the property. So the Stonewall Cottages essentially is a seasonal rental business that the property owners operate out of the existing historical cabins and trailers that are on the subject property. Next slide, please. So here we have just an aerial image of the existing conditions of the property. So as you can see, the property having that frontage onto Georgian Bay, you can see the lock just to the north that is creating the water there. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Thank you. And so the residential use that I was speaking of is located primarily along that northern lot line. So the existing dwelling, the attached garage, and a number of sheds are located there, which that is essentially the residential use. And then the structures along the east property line are essentially what make up the tourist establishment use. Next slide, please. So here we have some photos for those who may have not been able to attend the property for a visit. So the existing dwelling is here on the left with an existing detached garage on the right of your screen. Next slide, please. And here we have some of the accessory sheds and tent storage structures. And just of note for committee's understanding, if the application were to be approved and the owners were to rebuild the existing dwelling, these would be removed from the property. Next slide, please. Here we have the existing trailers, again, that make up part of that Stonewall Cottage's business for rental during the summer months. Next slide, please. And here we have a photo of the three historical cabins that have been on the property for some time and again are used for the Stonewall Cottage business. And I just wanted to note for committee's understanding, you can see in these photos the laneway along the east property line. It is professionally snow cleared throughout the entire year. When I was on site, it was cleared. And of course, that essentially would operate as the fire route for the business use on the property. So just of note there. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the application in front of committee for discussion today and for public comment will essentially allow for the Walters family to be able to rebuild the dwelling that's currently on the property and allow for that building to be expanded in footprint to essentially take that detached garage and bring it into the footprint of that new dwelling. So it would be essentially an amalgamation of those existing structures into one larger structure. The C8 zone, which is the current zone of the property, does permit residential use. However, it's very specific that it only allows for existing residential dwellings. So the reason why we have to come in front of the committee for this application, for the most part when it comes to the use itself, is to allow for the reconstruction because the zoning bylaw is limited in what it allows for reconstruction purposes in this zone. And it's important to note that really the reason why the Walters family is at this point, and we've worked, I think, for over 2 years now with staff on this file. So we've been in consistent communication with staff and working towards what is now being presented to the committee for consideration. Essentially, they went to go renovate that existing dwelling, and what they found was the dwelling itself, because it was, I can't remember what exact year it was built, but it's very old and structurally not sound. And it came to the point where they determined that it was more feasible to actually take that structure fully down and start from scratch and only utilize the foundation itself. So that's why we're here today. Next slide, please. So this is just a image of the proposed zoning schedule committee, mostly to just reiterate for your understanding that there is an existing EP zone that straddles that shoreline of the property. This application has no intent to modify or encroach into that existing zone. We are solely just looking at rezoning that C8 zone portion in the dark gray for the purposes of this application. Next slide, please. So this slide just provides an overview of the existing versus the proposed square footage of the existing dwelling to the proposed. And we have broken it out to include the proposed square footage without the garage and then the proposed square footage with. And it's important to note that the dwelling design that the Walters are seeking here does include a second story on top of their garage, but that area would be an unheated storage area. And again, the reason for that is to try and minimize the number of total structures on the property, being those storage sheds, et cetera, so they can also store a number of, required equipment and things like that for their business as well, to try and really minimize the extent of structures on the property. Next slide, please. So here we have an overview of the site plan, and obviously this is a bit challenging to read on the screen with all the septic and dwelling information. So if we go to the next slide, I've zoomed in a little bit on the dwelling area. So committee, the two red boxes that you see on your screen are the existing dwelling and the existing garage. So those structures, as I mentioned, would be taken down through this application, and the green outline is what essentially would be added to the existing dwelling's footprint. So that would be the resulting structure extent on the subject property. And if you look to the right of the screen, you'll see those green lines there. Those represent what the future delineated parking spaces would be for the site. And that currently is the area that those accessory sheds and storage tent trailers, tent structures are located. But again, those would be removed and they would be delineated as appropriate parking spaces for the commercial use. So on the next slide, actually on the next two slides, it just has an overview committee of the actual zoning matrix and the specific provisions that are being requested through this application. I won't go through them in detail because I'm sure you saw in both the staff report and our planning justification report, but in general, really this application, like I mentioned, is going to allow them to rebuild that dwelling. It's going to recognize a number of existing setbacks on the property in relation to the tourist establishment use, including an existing setback from the trailers to the east lot line, which is considered the rear yard setback. We would be maintaining the existing setback to the water that the current dwelling benefits from, as well as requesting a reduced interior side yard to the north boundary of 6 meters, and also requesting a 0 meter landscape buffer to that north boundary. And the reason for that, committee, is there is an existing easement that traverses the north of the property that is actually on title for both the lands to the north, which is now federally owned, as well as the subject property. So in that document that's on title, the Walters are not allowed to have any type of planting or anything of that nature put in place. They have to keep that area clear for the federal lands to the north. So that's where that comes from. And then on this slide here, you see the proposed provisions. And again, it looks like there's a lot here, of course, that we're asking for. But really, the way that the zoning bylaw is structured, and staff might be able to get into this more in their comments, this is just us recognizing the specific design of the garage being attached to the structure versus detached, the garage having that second story storage area, as well as the encroachment of a proposed deck on the front. So those are the provisions here on this screen. So if we go to the next slide, we have an elevation. So this would be the elevation of the dwelling. And as you see on the left side of the screen, that attached garage with the storage area above. This would be the view essentially from the driveway. So the internal view, not from the water. And then the next slide would provide the opposite side. And this would essentially be the view partially from the water, of course, orientated, not perfectly parallel, but essentially what a boater may see from the water side. So on the next slide, we just provide the associated schedules in regards to the official plan and the zoning bylaw. So the property is currently designated settlement living, and in your adopted official plan that is soon to be hopefully in effect, it does maintain that settlement living designation. And then, as I mentioned previously, on the left side of your screen, it just reiterates that that property is zoned, the C8 being your tourist resort commercial zone. Next slide, please. So committee, you're well aware, I'm sure, in your circulated package that our office provided a planning justification report that provides quite a detailed overview of all the applicable planning policy documents. I won't go into details on that, but if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to oblige. But essentially in that review, I was able to determine, in my professional opinion, that I believe the application in front of committee for discussion this morning is consistent with the provincial planning statement, is in conformity with both the county and township official plans, inclusive of your adopted official plan. And finally, it's important to note that the Walters family did engage a professional engineer to conduct a shoreline hazard assessment project in order to ensure that the proposed dwelling footprint being in the same location that the current is, would have no negative impact based on the flood hazard limit that essentially is caused from any potential failure of Lock 45. So there was an extensive amount of work that Tatham Engineering went into with that. And I believe that document has now been peer reviewed as well. But again, staff may speak to that, as well as an associated lot grading plan was also submitted as part of our application. So in conclusion, committee, as I mentioned, we're really here in order to allow for the owner operator of this Stonewall Cottages business to be able to maintain and live on site for the long term. And as you can see, they have a growing family and they're hoping to stay on this property for a long time and continue to have their roots in this community. The application, as I mentioned, will recognize a number of existing conditions, but primarily will allow for this new dwelling to be constructed. And again, as I mentioned, it is my opinion that I believe this application is in consistency with all applicable policy, especially in association with the fact that that shoreline hazard assessment came back with no concern in regards to the proposed building and septic locations. So as I mentioned, I'm here for any questions as well as the owners, and I will hand it back over to staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I now call on the applicant. Nope. Does the township's planner, Emily Kyle, have anything further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant?
Good morning, Chair. I do have just a couple of things to add. Thank you to Ms. Lemieux for her very detailed presentation on the application. I think it provided great context to the proposal. Just wanted to note that, as mentioned by Ms. Lemieux, the current zoning of the property is tourist resort commercial. As the property is commercially zoned and utilized for that tourist accommodation purpose, the lands are subject to site plan control, and an agreement with the municipality would be required prior to the issuance of a building permit or site alteration. The applicants are concurrently undergoing that site plan approval process. I just wanted to note, as mentioned by Ms. Lemieux, there was the shoreline hazard assessment that was undertaken as part of this process. A large part of the site plan control agreement process would be to ensure that the recommended measures recommended by the applicant's engineer and peer reviewed by the township's consulting engineer are implemented on site to make sure that those are carried forward. Other matters to be addressed through that process would be parking, outdoor storage, fire and emergency access, all kind of touched on by Ms. Lemieux in her presentation. As noted, the C8 zone recognizes the existing dwellings. However, the large purpose of the zoning amendment application before you this morning is to accommodate the construction of a new dwelling in the C8 zone. And as indicated, the applicants largely intend to utilize as much as the existing footprint as they can and consolidating other structures on the property to kind of limit that developed footprint. But that's all I have for you this morning and available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Are there any persons present in person on Zoom or the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak? Township staff will call upon each registered participant. For those in remote attendance, unmute yourself when called upon and turn on your camera if you wish. All will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will be recorded and live streamed to the Township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The Township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course submitting comments or questions. Emily, are there any members of the public registered to speak?
Thank you, Chair. As of this morning, no members of the public had registered to speak for this application.
Thank you very much. If there are any members of the public who did not get called and would, no, they're not here to speak. Okay, could the Township's planner please summarize any additional correspondence that has been submitted on this application and provide any further information?
Thank you, Chair. We did receive additional correspondence from Enbridge Gas. It was just their standard comments that I'm sure committee is familiar with, that they do not object to the application, but they reserve the right to amend their conditions, and a reminder to always call before you dig. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Does the applicant's agent wish to provide any further information on the application or in response to the correspondence? Thank you, Victoria. Now we'll go, do the members of the committee have any comments? Member Taylor.
Just a comment. I think I was on site along with the mayor, and it's unfortunate you couldn't maintain your grandmother's house, but I think the whole proposal looks good. You're going to get a new building and new septic, so it makes a lot of sense, and I support it.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the committee have any comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk? Great. I forgot to declare the public meeting closed. Thank you.
And the motion reads that planning report number P 25-002 dated January 15th, 2025, with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application file number Z 2413 for the subject property located at 3296 Port Severn Road be received. And further, that a draft zoning bylaw amendment be presented to council for consideration at the next available meeting, subject to comments received prior to council's consideration of the zoning bylaw amendment, including additional submissions from the planning committee, members of the public, circulated agencies, and township departments.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Member Taylor, seconded by Member Brennan. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Take care. Have a good day. Reports from officials for direction. G1, planning report number P25-01, Greenwood Landing. Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Chair Cox. So this is for the Greenwood Landing subdivision in Coldwater. The township is in receipt of another 2 applications for part lot control, which you've seen several times in the past. In this case, it's for blocks 81 and 82 on the north side of Brandon Avenue. And each block will contain 5 townhouses for a total of 10 new units. The construction is at a stage that allows council in the future to consider a part lot control bylaw, which divides the units by their common wall and allows them to be separately conveyed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Motion reads that planning report number P 25-001 dated January 15th, 2025, with respect to a part lot control bylaw applications for the lands described as blocks 81, 82, and part of block 80, plan 51M1227 be received, and that the draft part lot control exemption bylaw included as attachments 5 and 6 to the planning report P 25-001 be brought forward to the next available council agenda.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Member Jansen, seconded by Member McIntyre. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to G.2, Public Works Report number W25-01, Condominium Water Services Operations. Mr. Burke.
Thank you to the chair. So this report summarizes a conversation with 2 condominium groups for over 2 years. We were looking to have the condominiums take care of and maintain, operate their water system. That is called a Section 5, a private water system connected to municipal water system. However, unfortunately, the costs received back from private operators was quite extensive. We work with the condominium groups on a number of items, including responsibilities, increased transparency, and full cost recovery of the works that we perform on these condominium blocks. And therefore, we're recommending an extension and a new agreement with some new terms for a 5-year interval. The agreement is attached in the draft and provides the details that have been changed.
Thank you very much. Anybody on committee have questions? Member Jansen.
Not so much a question through the chair to Mr. Burke. I just want to comment. Thank you very much for working with these 2 areas. I know speaking with the Riverwalk members last year, they were quite concerned about the costs of finding a private service. I'm glad that we were able to come to a resolution on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Member Burkett.
Thank you through the chair to Derek. So Derek, like it's our water that they're using, but like how is this different than one of the homeowners that have water and sewer? Like how does it work? Just curious.
Yeah, for sure. So condominiums, when they're developed in a condominium fashion, all of the sort of internal common element infrastructure is owned collectively by, the property owners that make up that condominium block. And therefore, so the water mains, the sewers, the roads, the curbs, gutters, everything that's in there, streetlights, are owned and maintained by the condominium. We supply water to the door. And so if you were to think of a condominium, maybe in a vertical sense, all the internal piping and stuff that's inside a condominium may be common and commonly owned and maintained, but it's not municipally maintained. So they have their own drinking water license for the internal distribution network that they have inside the condominium block. And they are appointed by the ministry, required to have a designated operator, a licensed operator, operate that distribution network just like we would. So we provide a third-party service, if you will, under a Section 5 agreement to operate it for them, if that makes any sense.
Supplementary to you, Madam Chair, if I may. So let's say one of the pipes ruptures inside the condominium corp. Who pays for it?
So any capital and major renewal repair is on the condominium board. So they have contractors that they would engage. We would provide the baseline services of the operator. So we would, be able to shut the system down, retest the system once it was commissioned back in, but the actual repairs and any costs associated with capital or renewal is the condominium board's responsibility.
Thank you very much. That's good information. Anybody else have any questions? Member McIntyre.
Thank you. Through the chair, Derek. We're extending this for 5 years. Is that what I'm getting out of this?
Through the chair, yeah, I believe that's the term, yeah.
Did we, in doing that, have we checked the contingency fund to see the condominiums in good order?
Through the chair, the requirements of the operating is not to look at their long range asset management plans. However, that was one thing that was discussed during the renewal period. So each condominium board maybe wasn't fully aware of their responsibilities as being a private drinking water system owner, and that was one of the items of conversation over the last 2 years that we were very firm on. Is to remind them that there are responsibilities as a drinking water system owner and that we're purely an operator of the system.
Do we, through the chair, do we have any idea what their contingency fund is on these two properties?
Through the chair, no, it was a discussion, and it's not really in our purview to necessarily ask. The Ministry of Environment does regulate, so they have a financial plan, no different than we have a financial plan for the water system. It's a requirement of the license.
Well, it's supplementary. I just wondered that since we're billing them for water, yes?
Through the chair, we're billing them for consumption of water at the door. So basically, as consumption happens, it's the distribution network within that, kind of like your private plumbing. If you think about it as at a home, we charge you at the door for the water use, but the internal private plumbing is yours.
And also the sewage, right? The sewer?
Yeah, same system for the sewage, except for it's not regulated in the same way. They don't need a designated operator to oversee the sewage system.
And Derek, would you mind explaining the 3,500 and the whole 5-year process so it covers our costs, please?
So through the chair, there's 2 funding mechanisms, if you will, inside of this now. So one's a $5,000 deposit, and that's strictly to cover the testing. That was a previous condition of the last agreements, and it's to be drawn down like a deposit. There's a new deposit as well. It's a $3,500 deposit, and it's strictly for labor and vehicle use. So our fleet recovery and our labor staff recovery. And it is a deposit. So if we consume more than $3,500 a year, which is under the estimate, or our actuals will be under 35. But if it was over, the top up is required, and that's described in the agreement as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Mover and a seconder, please.
I can read the motion if you'd like.
Oh,
me
yeah,
to.
I guess better.
The motion reads that Public Works Report number W25-001 dated January 15th, 2025, with respect to condominium water service operations be received. Further, that the proposed agreement renewal be sent to Simcoe Vacant Land Corporation 391 West Shore Beach Club for consideration and approval. And further, that the proposed agreement renewal be sent to Simcoe Common Elements Corporation 349 Riverwalk Estates for consideration and approval.
Now may I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by member Jansen, second by member Minnings. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Any new business? Okay. And now we come to adjournment. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Motion's just that this meeting be and is hereby now adjourned at 10:18 a.m.
And may I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by member Taylor, second by member Raquette. All in favor?